We're going to work on word problems. Example 2a says, in the 2012 Olympics, Usain Bolt won the 200-meter dash with a time of 19.32 seconds. It wants us to write and solve an equation to find his average speed to the nearest hundredth of a meter per second. So the equation we're going to need is d equals rt. This is a common equation that you should definitely have written down. So d stands for distance. R is the rate, meaning the speed or how fast he ran. And T is the time, meaning how long he ran. So the numbers we know are 200-meter dash. That would be your distance. That's what we're going to plug in for the D. Now we also know a time of 19.32 seconds. So that's his time. And it asks us to find how fast he ran. So that's the rate. So R is the rate, which is also known as the average speed. And this is going to be in meters per second. So it always helps on word problems if you write out what all your variables stand for so that you're not questioning at the end, what was that R representing? So here's our equation. When it said write an equation, this would be our answer. 200 equals R times 19.32. So now to solve for R, it's R times 19.32. So we want to do the inverse of multiplying, which is dividing. So we're going to divide by 19.32. And remember, what we do to one side of the equal sign, we must do to the other. Now it did say to round to the nearest hundredth, and hundredth is 2 decimal places. So after I type that in my calculator, I find out that it is 10.35 meters per second, and that's what the rate is. So 10.35 meters per second is our answer, and our equation is 200 equals R times 19.32. Example 2b says, suppose Usain Bolt ran 400 meters at the same average speed that he ran 200 meters. How long would it take him to run 400 meters? And it wants us to also round our answer to the nearest hundredth of a second. So if you have the equation d equals rt, in this problem, using the information we know from example 2a, what is the variable you're going to have that doesn't have a number to plug in for it? Will it be d, r, or t? So in this case, t will be the variable that doesn't have something to plug in. How we know is we know the distance is 400 meters. We know the rate from example 2a because it said at the same average speed. So in example 2a, the rate was about 10.35 meters per second. And then it asks us how long. So that's saying how much time. So that tells me we don't know the t. So our equation is 400 equals 10.35 t. Now we want to get t by itself, and it is multiplying by 10.35. So the inverse would be to divide. So we're using the division property of equality. We're dividing both sides by 10.35. And it said round to the nearest hundredth, which would be 2 decimal places. So when I type that in my calculator, 400 divided by 10.35, I find that it would take him approximately 38.65 seconds to run the 400 meters. Now let's look at example 3. It says on January 22nd, 1943, the temperature in Spearfish, South Dakota fell from 54 degrees Fahrenheit at 9 a.m. to negative 4 degrees Fahrenheit at 9:27 a.m. How many degrees did the temperature fall? So if the temperature is falling, does that indicate we are adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Okay, so falling would indicate we are subtracting. So we went from 54 degrees, and then we subtracted a certain number of degrees. I'm going to use the variable t. And then we ended at negative 4. So my t is going to represent the number of degrees the temperature fell. So that's what my t is representing. So our equation is 54 minus t equals negative 4. Now if we want to get t by itself, first we need to move the 54. Now this subtraction sign is attached to this t. So the 54 is positive 54, so we need to subtract 54. That ends up tricking a lot of people. So 54 minus 54 is 0. We still have negative t. Negative 4 minus 54 is negative 58. So now to get t by itself, essentially that negative is the same as a negative 1. That's what we have right there. So it's negative 1t. They're multiplying. We can divide by negative 1 on both sides, and we get t equals 58. So it means that the temperature fell 58 degrees. Example 4 says, you thought the balance in your checking account was $68. When your bank statement arrives, you realize that you forgot to record a check. The bank statement lists your balance as $26. Write and solve an equation to find the amount of the check you forgot to record. So you had $68 in your bank account. Now, your balance is $26. So it went from $68 you thought you had to 26. So that means it decreased. So we are subtracting, and I'm going to use C for the amount of the check you forgot to record. And that would be in dollars. So I'm going to put a little dollar sign to remind myself that's what I'm going to label it as. So my equation is 68 minus C equals 26. So go ahead and try to solve this one and find out how much the check was you forgot to record. All right, so 68 is positive, so we are going to subtract the 68. So we have negative C. 26 minus 68 is negative 42. And remember, this negative is like a negative 1. So then we're going to divide by negative 1 on both sides. So C equals $42. And that is the amount of the check that we forgot to record.